thank you so much. And hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you very much for having us today. We're really happy to be here to talk about LSYPE2 with you all. Can I just check that everyone can see my screen and my slides?
Yes, we can, Anna, thanks.
That's great. So yeah, as mentioned, my name's Anna Scholes. I'm one of the project leads on this study at the DFE alongside Michael. Before we kick off, I'll give a bit of a brief overview of what we're going to cover. I'm going to provide some background to this study and its methodology, as well as covering what kind of data we've collected with the study so far. And then I'm going to pass over to Michael to chat about how this data has been used in the department more widely. And then we will cover the ways in which those in this network and further afield can access this data in the future. So I will kick off with what is LSYPE2, giving a bit of an overview of the study and its aims. So LSYPE2, also known as Our Future to its participants as its public-facing name, started at the beginning of 2013. This is just one of the longitudinal cohort studies designed and managed by DFE, and our contractor for this study is Kantar. So this study builds upon the original LSYPE1 study, which many of you might be familiar with, which ran from 2004 to 2010. Participants of LSYPE1 but were born between about 1989 and 1990, whereas for this one, the second study, these children were born between about 1998 and 1999. This roughly 10-year difference between the cohorts has allowed for some really interesting comparisons to be drawn between both studies, as well as providing some extremely rich data on children's lives as they navigate secondary school and early adulthood. So the aims of LSYPE2 are as follows. So we've been aiming to follow young people through their final years of compulsory education, to understand the transition from compulsory education to other forms of education, training, employment, and other activities. And this is where a lot of interest from other government departments, such as HMRC or DWP, really comes into play. And also to collect information about career paths, about the factors affecting those. And overall, just to build a strategic evidence base about the lives and experiences of young people in England during the 2010s and early 2020s. So LSYPE2 has had many different uses in policy design and analysis, both within and outside of the department. But before we get into these, I'm just going to briefly cover its methodology and its sampling design. So as I've mentioned already, the study is a prospective longitudinal cohort study with a two-stage sampling process. In the department, we have pupil-level characteristics and information for all young people in state education through the school census, which we use as a sampling frame for these pupils in this study. Schools were initially selected as primary sampling units, and we oversampled for more deprived schools. And because we had these pupil-level characteristics, this enabled us to stratify this part of the sampling to ensure that we had minimum coverage of particular subgroups of interest. So this might include those eligible for free school meals or FSM, those eligible for both FSM and with a special educational need, and certain ethnic groups as well, which has allowed for some robust analyses of these groups right through to subsequent waves, given the drop-off in attrition. We initially interviewed 13,100 young people in wave 1 with their parents as well, face-to-face at wave 1. The sample size initially was 17,770 households, so this was a 71% rate response rate at wave 1. And if you turn to the diagram that you can see on screen at the minute, you can see how the study is developed over time by both sample size, age of cohort, and mode of data collection as well. For the first 3 waves, the interviews were face-to-face, and this then subsequently moved to a sequential mixed mode design. So we first reached out after wave 3 and wave 4 at age 16 and 17. We reached out via web-based interviews first, then following up the telephone, and then face-to-face with harder to reach groups or those who just couldn't take part in any other way. And in these first 3 waves as well, the young person had at least one parent interviewed as well, but for subsequent waves, this was just the young person only. As we move through the waves of the study, you can see that the last wave was completed in 2021, wave 9. Our young people had just finished their higher education and were moving into the workforce. That's if they had completed higher education course at ages around 21 and 22. And the achieved response rate at this wave was 4,645. There is a more detailed roadmap of LSYPE2 that you can see here, but I won't dwell on it too long because it's quite detailed, but I'm sure as part of the slides afterwards, you can have a look at that if you wanted to see the structure of the study in a little more depth. So onto data collection topics. We've been able to ask a really wide range of questions in LSYPE2 over the years, ranging from just basic demographic questions to highly specific questions on COVID-19 or risk-taking behaviour. LSYPE2 contains many of the same questions as the previous LSYPE study to allow comparisons to be made between the two cohorts in the two studies. However, we did undertake some consultation to ensure that these questions are still relevant and to agree any additional questions that address more contemporary priorities for the department and further afield. These are also, of course, age-specific questions according to what life stage the individuals are at during that particular wave of fieldwork. And we consulted both internally and externally on topic areas for questionnaire design. So just taking some examples on previous topic areas that we asked about in wave 8, when participants were ages 20 to 21, we asked a lot of young people about their employment and their apprenticeships, and we were also able to identify those who were NEET, so not in education, employment or training. And this allowed for further analysis of this group against their outcomes, against factors such as mental health and well-being and financial circumstances as well. And then in wave 9, ages 21 to 22, participants were asked about areas of their lives that they felt might have been affected by COVID-19 and how this also seeped into other areas of their life as well. So employment, future plans, and so on. But yes, we've covered quite a lot of range of topics, educational experiences, as well as health, risky behaviours, so alcohol use, drug taking, relationships, future plans and employment and use of leisure time. So we've really had the benefit of being able to cover all bases of a young person's life and how this relates to their education, employment and other outcomes as well. And each year's questionnaire has been catered according to the most policy specific and relevant and age appropriate questions too. I think the key with this study is that we've managed to gather, a really wide range of evidence across quite a substantial breadth of topics within the study population within quite a relatively short space of time as well. So these specific topic areas then go on to inform, of course, the outputs and publications that are released. And I'll hand over to Michael to chat through these next.
Thanks, Anna. So LSYPE2 has been used in a variety of different ways within the department and outside the Department of Education. Last time we checked, the waves 1 to 3 data had 230 plus substantive requests via UKTS. So there should be corresponding outputs, journal articles, etc. Based on the study. But the most we know about in terms of analysis and uses is what happens inside the department. So here on the right are a list of different publications that have happened as a consequence of the department investing in this study. As you can see, they reflect the wide range of data collection topics that Anna was speaking about. So they've improved our understanding of attainment in relation to Key Stage 4 in particular, but also children's well-being and children and young people's well-being and development, their experiences of higher education and vocational routes, that sort of thing. So each one of these publications has been done by either Kantar or an analyst within the department to answer a specific policy question. So there's also a bit of social media and news coverage in relation to these publications, and occasionally ministers draw on these types of evidence to inform their speeches, which we've got an example of a prior Secretary of State for Education speech there that drew on LSYPE2 analysis. Next slide, please. So those are sort of how the various different types of analyses have an airing in terms of publication and a bit of media coverage and that sort of thing. But we also thought it would be helpful to touch on how the data get used in the department. So where there's a real impact, i.e. there's an action taken as a consequence of the analysis being done. But rather than list them all, because it's a very mature study now, I've created a little typology here of impact, if you like. So LSYPE2's enabled us to help target policy. So the example here is profiling pupils with different levels and reasons for unauthorised absence, which has been a recent department priority, particularly after COVID. Understanding outcomes. So we've been working with number 10 briefing. They're very interested in vocational qualifications and how they lead to different outcomes. So we've been zooming in specifically on apprenticeships and traineeships, which are shown to have particularly good outcomes in relation to material and well-being outcomes. Sometimes the study can just help raise awareness of different issues. So previously, ministers have written to the schools and the sector about gendered issues around STEM capabilities, attitudes and outcomes, and wanting settings to challenge those. There's plenty of government reviews and inquiries that go on that we've fed into. An example here is the Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities, where we showed the residual influence of ethnicity on attainment. Sometimes we're just lucky to have these resources because they're in place when emerging issues occur. So the obvious example is the pandemic, where we're able to show the psychological health impact for different groups of young people. And sometimes there's just perennial questions or big knotty problems that the data can help us to better understand. And the examples I've included here are the better attainment of London's disadvantaged pupils compared to their peers in the regions, and also the relative importance of different factors associated with educational disadvantage, be it at the pupil, home, school or neighbourhood level. Next slide, please. So talking about the future a little bit now. So at the moment we've got some activity planned in the new year where we'll be sending a mail out to all the study participants that are still with us, so to speak, just essentially to try and re-engage them by telling them a little bit about how the study's been used and what we intend to do in the future. And that will also set up a 10-minute web survey, which will effectively be wave 10 of the study, which will ask questions in relation to the topics that are shown on this spider diagram here, as these have been identified as part of a consultation in the department and other government departments, and represent areas of research interest. We're also doing this and other work to prepare the ground for the age 25 sweep 11 or wave 11 of LSYPE2, which will match the precedent set for LSYPE1. And at that age, we'll expect a lot of the steady state young adult outcome data to be available to enable us to do lots of interesting analysis as to how different paths through the education system influence adult outcomes. And as part of that type of analysis, we'll also be linking to the LEO data set, which you may have heard about, which is effectively the National Pupil Database, HMRC tax records and DWP benefit records, which give us a really good and rich administrative data set to draw on to help us understand labour market outcomes, and will enable us to follow the LSYPE2 sample into old age. Next slide, please. So access for LSYPE2, waves 1 to 3 are available via UKDS, and we were then stopped from depositing further waves on UKDS because of what was essentially concerns data directorate colleagues about some of the onward data sharing arrangements via that route. So we've been working with colleagues to deposit all of LSYPE2 waves 1 to 9 on ONS SRS, which we've heard about already, and we're hoping for that to be completed early next year. And we'll, as an interim measure, we're continuing to facilitate direct data shares on request. So we're happy to consider applications for access for the data, so long as they're from bona fide organisations and the analysis that's being suggested is feasible and sensible and that sort of thing. There are contact details on the last slide if you're interested in talking to us about that. And then very quickly, I just wanted to plug the work that was mentioned at the start, which is Education and Outcome Panel Study. This is the new set of cohort studies in the department, of which there will be 4, spanning from early years through to post-16. Each will have a starting wave 1 achieve sample of around about 8,500 participants, and there will be at least 5 waves of data collection. We've just finished wave 1 data collection for the early years study, which you may have heard of is called Children of the 2020s, but the programme of research and data collection will continue into the 2030s. And similarly, we'll be making those data sets available via ONS SRS to benefit from external analysis. Slide, please. So that's our presentation on LSYPE2. Thank you for having us, and happy to take questions if there's time.